One of the things that happened when women came to us and said, work with men, was that it was very confusing, because the first question was, well, what men? And why? What do we want them to do? And there was a general sense, and I think it's still a sense today, because I get a lot of people asking me, how do we get men involved? That men are just some kind of general mass of people, and if we just got more of them, somehow, accumulatively, in numbers, we would begin to make a difference. And that's not my understanding of how social change works. Social change works when people come together and organize around specific goals and start to put pressure on public institutions and on communities and things like that. And therefore, we need to think strategically about which men do we need in those struggles? What are the goals that we're trying to achieve? And which men do we want with us? Which men do we need? And so this question about which men and why, I think, is really important. And we have to be really clear about what our goals are. And then we can think, okay, in this community, this is what we're trying to accomplish. Which men do we need at the table? Which community leaders? Which young men? Which men with some influence or power or authority? What is the strategy? What are we trying to accomplish? So that's another piece of thinking about, just kind of framing this discussion about how do we get men involved, is we need to be much clearer about which men we're talking about. The last thing I want to say before I kind of move on into more direct work on this is just we need to acknowledge the context we're in terms of dealing with male violence. It's a time of empire. The United States is a world empire, and it's at war in Iraq, it's at war in Afghanistan, has military bases around the world. It's a very difficult time to talk about male violence when war is being glamorized and perpetrated against many different peoples. It's also a time of vast media glamorization of violence, whether it's video games or computer games or sports or whatever. So again, it's a very difficult time to be talking about male violence or alternatives to male violence. And so we need to acknowledge that this is a very challenging task, and sometimes we can want to settle for very small victories rather than thinking about what is our vision. And it's also very easy to get focused on what we're against. We're against male violence, but what are we for? What kind of communities are we trying to build? How do we want to live together in our families and in our schools and in our communities? So part of the work that we do is also about visioning. What is it like to live in a community that's safe? What does that mean? And that's a conversation that men are welcome into, because men want to live in a safe community too. And so one of the things that we try to do is to reframe this, not so much, of course it's essentially focused on male violence, but it's also about building community and how do men participate in that, and young men as well. So I want to spend a little time looking at socialization a little bit. Let's see. So I want to start out by thinking about babies. Think about holding a newborn baby in your arms, or being around the wee ones, the toddlers, the little ones. And I'm going to draw a heart up here representing the heart of a newborn baby. What are some of the qualities that you notice when you're around young children and when you're holding babies? What do you notice about them? Trust. Vulnerable. What? Honesty. Expressive. Expressive. And did you say unconditional? Unconditional. And I would put unconditional love and acceptance. When people walk in the room, there's no conditions around reaching out to them, right? It's not who they are. It's just, here's another person. Here's somebody human that I can relate to. Anything else that comes to mind?
Fearless.
Fearless. Absolutely. Okay. Some combination of all of these qualities. Now, when you think about the adolescents you know, much less the adults, they don't look like this anymore, do they? Something happens to us, right? Something attacks these qualities. What are some things that adults say, or some messages that adults give to young people that would attack the qualities of this heart? Don't. Don't. What are some other phrases or words or messages? Shut up. You're not good enough. And if this is a girl child, what are some messages a girl child might get that would attack her heart? Shut down. Girls don't do this. What else? Be pretty. Be careful.
Don't be angry.
Don't be angry. And if this is a boy child, what are some messages that it might get? Be a man. Be strong. Don't cry. Be tough. If this is a child from a low-income family, low-income working class family, what kind of messages might be getting from the society? What? Don't expect. Don't ask. You're worthless. Get a job. And if this is a child of color, Maori, Pacific Islander, Asian Pacific, what were some messages that this child might receive? Get another job. What else? Get back, get them before they get you. There's something wrong with you. You're just not as good as. And if this is a child with emotional or mental disabilities, or physical disabilities, you're a freak, dummy.
You're embarrassing.
You're embarrassing. You're a retard. You can't do that.
You're a nuisance.
You're a nuisance. So what's happened to the heart of this child? It's been attacked, hasn't it? Over and over again. And pretty soon, what do we do when we get attacked? Is pretty soon we put up some barriers, don't we? Some shields. And pretty soon this child's heart has shields around it. And so we no longer can see this child anymore, right? Because when they walk into the room, they walk in with all of this armor and protection. And if I'm down here, and this is me, and I had all these wonderful qualities at one point, but I've been attacked, so I've got some shields up. So if I say something to you, and it comes from my heart, but it comes out through my shield, so it gets distorted, and then it gets to your shields, and it gets distorted some more, so by the time it gets to you, it doesn't sound like what I intended. It makes it really hard for us to talk to each other. It makes it really hard for us to even see each other through these shields. And I think one of the things that's important to know is that boys come into the world with all of these wonderful qualities. That is not natural or biological for boys to be violent. And I think there's a lot of misinformation about that. But it's a training process, and we all get trained in various ways around this. And part of the work is to reclaim what's inside here. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Now, what's the purpose of this training? Why do we do this to little kids?